back to today's episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. Today we plan to do another episode on out-of-season breeding. This is a question that seems to be a very hot topic. So we had some listeners, as you all know, we do take listener questions, and we had some listeners saying, hey, we'd like to hear from somebody that is doing out-of-season breeding without using any CIDRs, no PG 600. They'd like to hear how it's working for an operation that is just using genetics and selecting for that fall lambing, the use of any of the hormones, etc. So right away, Matt and I think both thought of some folks we know in Missouri, Henry and Becky Schultz from Prairie Lane Farms. They are Katahdin breeders there in Missouri, and we gave them a call, and we have them on here today, and we're just going to do a dive into their production system and what has worked for them and see what we can learn from them. So happy to have you here, Henry and Becky.
Thank you.
So to get started, can you just give us a little bit of an overview, a little background on how you got started in sheep, or maybe it's how you got started in Katahdins. I forget how far back you go with sheep, but yeah, just give us a little background.
Well, all right. What I got into the sheep business when I was 16, and I'm going to be 75 here in November, so you can kind of do the math on that deal. We started out with the wool sheep with Suffolks, and then when I got married, Becky had the Cordales in her family. So we had Suffolks and Cordales for a while, and then when my children got into the 4-H, we got into the Dorset business with added Dorsets to the bunch. So I've worked with I don't know how many different breeds through the whole on this career, my whole career. So that's basically a rundown how we did it. When we got into Katahdin business, we got them in on a whim. My girls had went to college, and I had the farms paid for, and all of a sudden I had extra money. So I talked to Tom and Maria Dosh, and they sent me down 10 ewes. And out of that 10 ewes, I was fortunate enough to find 4 that I could base all the bloodlines in this flock for. And then I went to Lincoln University, and I bought three ewes out of this 20 Grand Ram that Leroy Boyd had at his breeding. And I went up to Rodney, in Alabama? Acres, and bought some more of the Leroy Boyd. When Leroy passed away, we found out where the flock went, and I went back up there and produced 4 more in a ram. And from those, I stemmed the flock up on him. We've had them about 2008 when I did all this and everything. So, but that's kind of a history on how we did it. The fall lambing thing started by accident, really. We had a buck that was pretty aggressive. We called Too Tall, and this old ram, he would breed out of season. And so once I got the ewes to kind of do it, we left him on a fall lambing type cycle. And so that way I had a cash flow going. These ewes were fall lambing, and then we were having spring lambs, of course, also. From there, we just just progressed up a little bit. We used try to use fall bucks all the time, fall rams if we can help it. Now the flock's got so much genetic fall lambing in it, you can turn out a spring ram lamb, and it doesn't matter. They'll do it for you. And we lamb like different groups of ewes doing that.
So this year we lambed 70 ewes in the fall and 70 in the spring. But the first year we tried it, I think we got 8 fall lambs, and we thought, boy, is this worth it. So we just kind of had to hang in there, So
I'm curious on your fall lambing. You said once they lamb in the fall, you'd leave them on that schedule. Is that correct?
Right.
And
yes, that's correct.
Do they do pretty well with that? Or do you find that sometimes, there's some that drop off if maybe one year they aren't able to breed in the fall or?
Right. Yeah. Usually they're pretty well like clockwork. They just kind of cycle, and you'll find out they'll all do it about the same time every year.
Yeah.
And grab my phone. Anyway, what you do is you'll get one every now and then, like you said, it was going to drop off. Usually, I don't put her back in the fall herd. That's the downside to doing it like we do. Now, we did double lamb crop to get our numbers up. Mm-hmm. We double lambed the ewes, and how we did it, we turned with the ewes that would lamb in January and February. We would, once we weaned them, we try to wean at 8 to 10 weeks, and once we did it, we'd turn a ram in with them. with those ewes, and we usually got about 50% of them to breed back. And so they would end up with two lambs in 1 year, two lamb crops in 1 year. Now I don't do the third lamb crop. I didn't. But once I get them into a fall cycle, we leave them like that. The only downside to it, I found out that my spring lambing, by taking those early lambers all the time to the fall side of it, they started lambing a little later every year. So I've kind of had to adjust our program to keep up with the early lambing.
Do you think that's because you were getting those early lambers you were getting on a fall schedule, so that started pushing your spring schedule back?
It did. Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah.
So we used to get most of them would lamb in January. Now they don't start till about the last week of January, 1st February, right in there. Now they do it quick once they hit. I mean, we'll be done in most of the time in 17, 18, maybe 2 heat cycles. We'll have them all done. But there. And then the ones that just notoriously lamb late, I just call them. I'm getting too old to put up with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And there, the genetic part of it now, I think it's, if you want, the person was wanting to try it, it's about 75% genetics and then about 25% management. So we breed them in a dry lot. Okay. Well, where I live, we farm everywhere. Okay. Everything's row crop. So our sheep we got a pasture we can put the brood ewes in, and the rest of the lambs are dry lotted. And so we don't turn out the grass till about the 1st of May. Okay. Here. And by doing that, we put those ewes in a dry lot with that ram, put them on a big bale, and we'll bring in, you want to feed them a sweet feed. It's what we feed them to flush them. Okay. And I have a ration bill. at home. It's basic ground corn, soybeans, oats, or whatever. It's a 15.5% ration. And they're eating a pound of that a day while they're breeding. But in that dry lot, that ram doesn't have to compete very much. It's kind of like a captive audience. So,
yeah,
when those OUs are cycling, they'll bring some more in with them. And the other trick to it, if you got some maiden ewes, one of the tricks you can do is take 3 or 4 old ewes that that are cycling all the time for fall lambs. You throw them in with them maiden ewes. And they'll once they start cycling, they'll bring some of them maiden ewes around with them.
Yeah.
And that's another trick we use. There is a third time. When you wean them, we had a vet from the university at the time. His name was Dr. Volkman. And he told me, he helped me more than anything when in terms of getting a lambing percentage up and a conception rate up. You turn your ram in right after you wean them, the day or two you wean them. You turn that ram right in there with them while they're trying to dry up. And usually in about 10-day hitch, they'll start cycling around. A lot of them will. But you want to feed them a sweet feed too, he told me. So like I said, we feed our own grind and mixed ration. Plus I buy these, they're Purina ultra fill tubs. Basically it's a molasses type protein type tub, and we keep it in it. Our feed has a lot of molasses to it.
Yeah, so I was going to ask. I was going to ask you on that. You're calling it a sweet feed, so I'm assuming there's molasses in there.
Oh, yeah, very much so. A lot of it. When it's all done, there's 75 pounds of liquid molasses in it, or whatever the product is. They're calling liquid molasses, and 25 pounds of bean oil, and then there's another 50 pounds of dry molasses per ton put into it. So it's loaded pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could give them diabetes on it if you weren't careful.
But you're only feeding a pound.
Yeah, between a pound or a pound.
Yeah.
I'm feeding a pound and a half a day to them, and plus they're running on big bales of hay. Yeah. And it's basically grass hay, orchard grass. It's just Missouri grass, fescue in it. But that's pretty well how I manage it.
So these ewes are probably cycling ever since we weaned the lambs. So they breed right away. Like when we turn in April, they're almost all bred by May 1st. And when June 1st comes, you might as well take the ram out because they're not going to cycle anymore.
We squeeze in Missouri.
Not where we are. And I think that varies depending on where you live.
Sure.
Yeah. So back to that that lick tub. What you said it's which Purina tub is it?
It's the purple one.
Yeah, it's They call it. It's called Accuration, I guess, is what we're trying to tell you. Purina Accuration.
Okay, there ultra high octane, ultra full. Is that? I'm just looking on
different feed. I go. Yeah, it's Accuration is what it's called. Purina Accuration.
Okay.
It comes in a purple. I just know it, but it's what they call purple tubs.
Yeah.
I want purple tubs, and they throw them on for me.
Yep.
Yep. What body condition are you using going into that? I think that's something a lot of people miss.
I don't know. I'll let Becky ask you. I just everybody looks.
I would guess probably 3. Those really thin ewes won't breed, so you got to have a little coverage on them. You know, I would guess they're probably a 3.
Gotcha.
About that.
Yes, yeah. But you also don't want them too fat, though.
No. In the ones that we're rebreeding that are double breeding, they're probably none of them are going to be super fat.
Sure.
We feed. Once we wean our fall lambs in December, and they would breed back right away. But lambs in July don't do well in Missouri because it's just too hot.
Yeah.
So we breed our fall ewe lambs at 12 months, and they'll lamb in the spring, and then they may eventually end up in the fall lambing cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But if we didn't breed them at 12 months, they would get you fat.
Yeah. So you're not breeding maiden ewes in the springtime?
Yes, we breed our yearling ewes. They're 15 months old. The hardest thing to get to breed is maiden ewes.
Yeah.
And right now, we usually get about 50 to 60% of our maiden ewes to fall lamb.
Yeah.
We just couldn't get any of them to fall lamb, but we've got enough genetics in them, and we put in some old ewes. So we do get some. We do get our those maiden ewes to fall lamb.
Yeah, that's pretty good actually. If you're getting 50% of maiden ewes,
we thought so.
Yeah, without any extra CIDRs or anything. So,
right.
Yeah.
There is another trick I found out that'll work with, especially on a maiden ewe. Usually ours, here we run a breeding stock like we do. I've got them pretty fat by the time we decide to turn the ram in for fall lambs. Okay, about a month before you want to turn your ram in, you put those maiden ewes on just nothing but grass hay, and make them go that way. And then when you get ready to turn your ram in, you start flushing them again, and it acts like a flushing agent. I found that out by accident one year when our barn caved in. We had 3 of them that jumped in with our old dried up, our ewes we were drying up. We really didn't have a place to go catch them again, or I was just too lazy. I'm not sure which. But anyway, I left them out there, and they were the first ones that bred for fall lambs. Yep. So after that, I started trying that. And now you can do that trick, and it will help.
So
that's
so.
Pardon?
So when you say you're putting these maiden ewes in with mature ewes that you think are cycling, you're putting them in with mature ewes and turning the ram out right away, or what? How's that?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. Usually it's the other way around though. I bring the old ewes to the maiden ewes. I don't run that maiden ewes with the main brood ewe flock. I turn and I do it the other way around. And here again, they're all kept in a dry lot. That ram doesn't have to chase them too far.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So, and you're just putting a couple maiden ewes in there.
I usually put about 3 or 4. About 3 or 4.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Especially, you pick out the ones that are in the condition are really bad. You didn't think they come through the winter just exactly right, or and being breeding stock like I get a lot of old ewes. I mean, we're talking 8, 9-year-old ewes. Yeah. So they're you can feed them a little bit. So when you're selling them lambs out of them, they're making you quite a bit of money out of them.
Sure.
So and so those are ideal candidates to go in with the ram and in with that maiden ewes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then we ultrasound them. Our ewes, we'll ultrasound them in the fall. We'll ultrasound them about what is the first
End of July.
End of July. You don't want to do it too much earlier than that because you'll get a few false positives on the deal. They'll either absorb or something. But so then that way we know what ones are bred. We sort them off, and then the rest we turn around and breed for spraying.
I'm curious. Are you using marking harnesses on your rams?
No, I
Okay.
don't. The reasoning is that years ago when I had some Dorsets, I got one, a ram, and got hung up in that marking harness. My rams were all the time, something was going wrong. And I was farming real bad, hard, and I didn't get him caught quick enough. So, and he messed up his chest. After that, it was just easier for me not to put a harness on him. So that's why I don't use one.
Yeah. Now, the reason I asked that is we've found with our spring breeding, with marking harnesses on the rams and then preg checking, that there's more ewes that they showed up bred with the marking harness, but then when we preg checked them, they weren't pregnant. So I think, we're in the springtime like that, we're having more ewes that maybe just like you were saying, absorbed that lamb or got pregnant but didn't really carry it. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, the other problem I had with the marking harnesses, we used a lot of young rams sometimes, and you turn that young ram out there and he's trying to jump on everything. So you've got marks all over creation, really.
Yeah.
And it was getting, and I'm a little bit colorblind. So there's only certain colors that I can use.
Yeah. Yeah.
We went to an expo in Pennsylvania, and they told us that although you will increase your pregnancies with CIDRs and shots, you will also increase the number of abortions. That you have to find that sweet spot of PG 600 that just Dr. Volkman has told us you just want enough to do your job, and if you overdo it, then you have problems. My son-in-law went to a ultrasound school in Texas, and they told him that ewes that are ultrasounded between 35 and 45 days, that up to 30% of them can absorb. So when we did have our ewes ultrasounded in June, we had some that ultrasounded positive that were not bred. So that we wait till late July, and we don't have that problem anymore because I think the stress of the summer must cause some of them to absorb.
It makes sense. That early gestation is a really critical time period. So if you're stressing
so sometimes when you've got a harness on and a ewe mark, she probably does get bred, but then she absorbs and then comes in later. And so it's not 17 days, it's a few more days. We tried CIDRs and shots with our other breeds years ago, and we just felt like we messed up Mother Nature.
We couldn't get anything to work, so we just quit.
So we just stopped doing that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less work.
And cost. The CIDRs get expensive.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of ewes.
They get expensive and everything. So we've tried years back in the 60s. I tried MGA. I went with MGA, and we were getting what we called sponges. They were made. We used some pregnant mare serum, and we could get the Cordales to do it with those things, but it wasn't very economical. You may get 4 or 5 out of 15 ewes if you're lucky. So I just got tired of doing it. The MGA we were using at the time was very tricky to use too. I have a lot of bovine feeders, and I just wasn't precise enough. Sometimes I'd get these old, what I call boss ewes, and get in there, eat more than the rest of them. And I got to looking, and pretty soon after 2 or 3 years of that stuff, these old ewes weren't lambing at all. I don't know what the problem was, but I laid it on to the MGA that I was using. So it took them so long to get out of their system. So that's about the time I quit. We quit messing with it. And like you said, it's very time consuming and labor consuming. And at my age, I'd rather be fishing than I would be in that.
Hey, wouldn't we all?
Yeah. And then if you don't have enough ram power, you have to stagger the CIDRs yet. and
Yes.
it just makes it more complicated and more time consuming.
And well, that's the problem too. And I have enough little pins around here now that, back then I wasn't set up for 5 or 6 in this pin and 5 or 6 in another pin or something like that. So the system I found with these, once I got the Katahdin lambing, it wasn't hard once I got them to get in the cycle of doing it. They just kind of did it on their own. And I was fortunate. Maybe it was the fact that I bought some from the north. I bought the ones out of North Dakota at the time. And then, of course, but I went south to get Leroy's down here in Alabama. But I don't know. Maybe I was just fortunate in what I bought. To start out with, I don't know.
We've learned that some sheep we buy will fall lamb and have never fall lamb before, and maybe some ewes, some ewes just won't fall lamb. So what you were asking about, the ones that stay in that fall lambing group, if they don't breed the next year, and we don't have many until they get really old, they don't breed the next year, we pull them out and they don't go back in that group.
Yeah.
So that way we can keep our fall lambing group a group that always fall lambs, so that kind of intensifies the genetics, I think.
Sure.
Right. So with your ewe lambs that are born in the fall, I'm just trying to make sure I understand how do they get moved back to the fall? So let's say that, where are they born? September, October, or is it later than that?
Yeah.
Well, September. They're about the first part of September. Yeah, we'll be done if they're lucky by the 1st of October without no trouble.
So when
what I do,
yeah, go ahead.
We breed them with those September and October lambs that we got. We'll breed them in August to have January lambs, February lambs. And then once we do that process like I told you. When we wean them, we throw the ram right there with them and try to get them to cycle back. Mm-hmm. And most of them, over the years, they would breed right back. And usually on that fall lambs, they end up lambing twice in 1 year. Yeah.
But after
a big portion of them. After that,
then they go back. Then they're back to the once a year cycle, just in the fall.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's basically how I start them. And every now and then we'll get some of them fall ewe lambs that don't breed back for fall lambs. They're breed in spring, but usually the next season they come right around. There's enough fall genetics in them that we don't seem to have any trouble.
Sometimes we will not expose them for fall lambs the first time they lamb, but then we'll do it the second time they lamb when they're more mature.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll do that. It just depends on how many we have fall lambing and how much barn space we have, or space for them,
Sure. Yeah. So are you keeping back any replacement ewe lambs probably you're keeping out of your fall group?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This year, we'll keep back the top 20 of the fall ewe lambs we had. We ended up with like 30 out of the group, 30 fall ewe lambs. And we kept the top 20. Yeah. We try to put replacements in as fall ewe lambs if we can get them, if we do it. I mean, now I've got them so much genetics in there, it doesn't seem to matter. Like we kept back 20 spring yearling ewes too, and we'll try to get some of them to get into the fall lambing cycle. And then you'll find some of the rams, their offspring, they just won't do it. I mean, we bought a ram one time and his offspring, he just wouldn't do it. And so, and even with our ewes, so we moved it on down the road.
Do you find, talking of rams, and I think I kind of know this answer already, but do you typically, we say we should have more ram power in the spring? Being you're a purebred producer, I'm guessing you're already running pretty small groups. If you're like me and Leon anyway, you have a lot of rams that you want to use. But do you have any advice in that as far as how many rams or how many ewes you should run with one ram?
Here where we're at, like you pointed out, I have a lot of little pins. Most of our ewes, 40 would be the top. Okay, that'd be about as many as I'd want. I mean, I don't want a big mature ram to use on that bunch. Mm-hmm. Usually those lambs, there's probably 15, maybe sometimes 10 in a pen with a ram. But here again, like I said, we may have 5 different rams running out there in different lots and with breeding seasons. And I think that too, we get them all grouped together a lot closer.
Sure.
And we get the young rams that we think we want to keep back for ourselves. I usually try to try them on a handful of little ewes early while they're still pretty young. That way I can kind of figure out kind of what we're getting at.
Yeah.
Before we turn about with the main group.
Yeah. But you don't really change that from spring to fall breeding as far as how many ewes you would run with one ram.
No, usually in the fall for fall breeding. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, these ewes, most of the all old quality, we'll split them up. And like I said, they'll be in them dry lots and we'll split them up. Like we got right now we're running, I got one ram running with about 40 ewes. That's what he's running with in there. But they're such tight. I mean, he'll group them within 2 heat cycles with that 40. Then I've got another lot out there. We turned out there's only 10 in it right now. I'm getting ready to turn him in with about 10 more, or maybe 20. But these are mature rams. They're like coming big yearling rams. They were last year's fall lambs, is what they were.
Yeah.
We do get a few less twins in the fall, but most of the research has shown that the difference in your price on the market offsets your less number of lambs. Calculated my adjusted 60-day weights on the same ram in the spring and the fall. And Dr. Kennedy used to say, use never milk is good in the fall. And I would say that my adjusted weights on the same ram, he will always be lower in the fall. But then I think they grow more after we wean them because they're not trying to grow in July. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of balances out by the time it's over with.
Yeah.
But they do milk better in the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about that milking better in the spring versus the fall, it made me think of, do your fall lambs tend to not shed out as clean as early? Like they hang on to that maybe, I call it their lamb coat a little bit longer maybe?
Yeah, will. Yes, a bit longer.
We bought a show horse one time, and it came from a heated barn, and we put him in our unheated barn in April, and he grew winter hair, and he had that all winter long. So when these lambs are getting ready to shed it January, and Mother Nature's saying, grow some more hair. So they may be slick when we wean them, and then they've got to grow all this hair. Well, they've grown it late. Mm-hmm. So it kind of messes up Mother Nature with fall lambs, and they don't shed as well because of that. At least that's my theory.
I mean, they will shed later. Out just fine later. Yeah, they'll shed fine just later.
They just do it later.
Right. They don't shed as fast as my spring.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, that is interesting. I think that's pretty consistent with what most people say and see with you have slightly less milking ability in the fall, but whether you're selling those for breeding stock or selling them to the meat market, you're usually pretty happy with the prices, even if they grow a little bit slower.
That's the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Missouri. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We have a lot of fescue in our country. So, our OUs, they don't go out to pasture after they start lambing. That fescue, they just can't do it. Nurse lambs live on that fescue too well. So they're up in dry lots after they lamb. When they start lambing, we bring them to the dry. I got them preg tested. We put them right into a dry lot, and from there I start feeding them grain.
We're surrounded by cornfields, so corn is not that expensive here. I mean, that's what we have. But fescue pasture is not very good pasture.
Yeah. So what are you feeding those ewes?
Not created equal.
Right.
That's true. Very true.
Right. So those ewes, what's your lactation ration look like? Is it similar to your flushing ration or?
Yeah. What the ration I have is a 15% ration, and I found out you can use it for everything. I mean, we're talking. There's enough. I put enough roughage in it that you could self-feed it if you want to. Okay. And we use them for a lamb creek too. Yeah, and the main reasoning was Mama teaches that lamb to eat that grain right there while she's still in the lambing jugs. And so I hardly ever have any trouble getting them little lambs to start off running to a creek. I tried a lot of the high dollar creeks, and everything's usually pelleted. Well, them little lambs since Mama's on that ground ration, they don't really go to them pellets very fast. But he'll take right to that ground feed because Mom's taught him how to do it.
Yeah, and they'll eat it well. I calculated my actual 60-day weights on all my rams because some people tell me I don't understand that adjusted thing. I want to know what they really weigh, and so I just did all the ram lambs and I calculated my average 60-day weight on all my fall ram lambs was 62 pounds, and that was the good ones and the bad ones and the whole thing. So they do grow well on a seed.
Yeah, we do feed when them ewes are lactating. I do feed alfalfa. Okay, the bred ewes that are milking nursing lambs, they'll get alfalfa instead of grass hay and everything. I usually buy about 1,800 little bales a year, and that's what I feed. It just goes I'll feed it to the lambs, and of course I'll feed it to the show sheep and sale sheep we're getting ready to go to the sales with. And but the remainder of the herd goes out on pasture or on big bales.
Coming it back to the genetics thing for fall lambing, is that how do you do that when you're going out buying new rams? Are you trying to mostly just buy fall born rams, or you just kind of buy one based on the other traits you want and see how he does for fall lambing, or
it's a kind of a little bit of both. I don't buy too many rams, to be right honest with you, sir. I mean, we'll put one or two in when I think I need an outcross ram.
Sure.
Our herds really line bred, really, and so it's line bred pretty tight. And so, in fact, you could probably trace them back to 5 or 6 old ewes, most of them. But yeah, we use the NSIP program some. Becky can tell you more about that than me, and I don't pay a lot of attention to it. But if I try the trait that I'm looking for, yes, if I can find a fall ram, I would rather buy a fall ram than I would a Springer. But it just depends, pretty much like you pointed out, if the ram's got what I want him to do, or at least what I think he will do.
Yeah.
And I haven't, in that respect, I haven't had too much problems. Every now and then we'll buy one, and I think this is increment. That's my own fault. Nobody forced me to buy him.
So when you buy that fall ram, are you looking back through his pedigree and seeing how often his dam lambed in the fall and his grand dam and so forth?
Yes, what is it, the pedigree master, whatever it is. We research them hard before we buy them. That I do. And I don't try to buy off the online too much. I guess I'm too old fashioned for that, but we do it. But if you do, I like to see a video of them. I want to see them move and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. And I imagine with a breeding program like you have, buying in rams, like you said, is always kind of a gamble. They're not your sheep. And
the NSIP program, it helps when you use the NSIP program. It kind of gives you a little bit of an idea, but I don't rely on a terrible amount. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I do buy a new ram, sometimes they don't always have a very much accuracy, or their history may be not complete. So I always average all their lambs 60-day weights and compare them to the other rams in the group, because the NSIP numbers will finally come around, but that kind of gives me a more immediate of how they're doing. I know we bought one. Yeah, go ahead.
It takes a little while for those NSIP numbers to adjust. So I think that's a really good way to see what you're actually getting right now.
we started out with not much history, and my lambs had PWWTs of 1.5, and they were gaining a pound a day. And I thought, well, how does this work? And then I realized it was just the history was not the accuracy. The history was there. So I really do rely on those adjusted 60-day weights, and we are consistently feeding them very similarly. I mean, I know it could vary a lot depending on how they're raised from lamb crop to lamb crop. But yeah, we do have several people in Missouri that are fall lambing naturally, and some of them share the same genetics. We all kind of started at it the same way, and there are several flocks here, aren't there, Henry? That are we have a few flocks that are fall breeding naturally. I mean,
it's exciting to see. It's something I've really dug into and tried to figure out. And I mean, we can get consistent fall lamb crops. It sure makes the sheep enterprise budget look a lot better. It's just, and it helps the industry out as well.
Yeah, that's basically why we started, was for cash flow.
Yeah,
it really helps out on the cash flow part of it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm probably going to buy some PG 600 and CIDRs here next week, but maybe I should just do enough for half my flock and try again. I mean, I know I and Matt both have tried it without using CIDRs, with pretty unpredictable results.
Right. And that happened to us at the beginning too. It was like, oh, is this really worth it? Right. But then we started finding those ewes that would consistently have a set of twins in the fall, and maybe, using her ram or some of her progeny. And it just kind of snowballs once you get started. Yeah. And like I said, what works in my area, I mean, I know it's daylight is different everywhere. The daylight lengths, I do know that there are people in mid Iowa that are fall breeding and just turning the ram in, so I don't know how far you can go north where you can't say that it's a problem.
We've got a producer up about 2 hours north of Des Moines, and he does a lot of it, but he uses a lot of our genetics.
And he
just turns ram in now. And like I say, some of the management tips that I explained to you, some of those will help your percentage a little bit if you can if you can do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it.
That goes into the thought of, there's a piece of the pie that's environment, and if the more percentage points that we can get lined up right in that 25% or whatever that percentage is, that's actually environment. I don't know if we know exactly what that percentage is, but the more little pieces that we can get in the right order are going to just help keep bumping that thing in the right direction.
Oh, yes.
Right.
I really think one of the keys to making it work the best is the dry lot, because that ram doesn't, he doesn't have to travel a lot in the pasture.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing for, 5 or 6 ewes huddled around that ram there in the mornings, early mornings.
Yeah.
I think that makes a little bit of a difference.
And like I said, they're all bred in 30 days. So by the time they're bred, they're, at that point in time, we may have some grass. Right now, we don't have that much grass anyway.
And you're mostly breeding them in April.
Yeah. April,
Yeah.
First part, early May.
Yeah. And the ram comes out in June because he's not going to breed anything anyway. And when you get him ultrasounded, he wants to know, has the ram been out 30 days? So we need to take him out for 30 days.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think breeding, in April there before it gets hot, like I think that is a big piece of it too, because once it gets hot,
I think so too.
It definitely.
And we think we get more ewes bred when it's spring that's really overcast and cloudy and not bright and sunny, and if it snows in April here, I mean, we think that weather kind of makes a difference too.
Yeah.
Well, I better get the rams turned out then.
Yeah, it's snowing. Get the rams out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, this has been a very, very good discussion. Interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Henry and Becky, if you want to, if people want to learn more about your farm or anything, is there any plug you want to put in for Prairie Lane?
So yes, we're more than happy to talk to people. Henry likes to talk about sheep. We're having an online sale June the 2nd with Integrity. We'll be selling some of those natural born fall lambs. We always and we have a Katahdin Facebook page, Prairie Lane Farms Katahdin Sheep. What
about a website?
We do have a website. I think it's prairielandfarms.net.
All right. I'll put a link there in the show notes to your 2 pages.
Yes. Yes.
So people want to reach out to you, they can reach out there through your website and get in contact with you.
Yeah. Henry likes to talk about sheep, so it's not a problem.
We'll be glad to try to explain what we did. But...
We've had sheep long enough that we think we've learned from making mistakes, and we've had 70 years to make lots of mistakes. So.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Profitable Sheep and Goat Production Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Lost Creek Wholesale, your universal feeder distributor, as well as your sheep and goat handling and feeding equipment supplier. If you're looking for a feeder to supplement those ewes on pasture, or maybe you're looking for a creep feeder for those lambs or kids, check out our website, www.lostcreekwholesalellc.com. Visit our dealer page and find a dealer near you. If you have a topic you'd like to hear covered, feel free to give us a call and leave us a voicemail there at 717-310-3641, or you can shoot me an email at leon@lostcreekwholesale.net. Thanks, and we'll catch up with you next time.